In today's video, I have some amazing DIY snowman home decor projects. A few of them are brand new in the beginning, and then the rest are mine and subscriber favorites, so I hope you all enjoy. Now, let's get crafting. For this project, I'm starting off with 3 styrofoam balls from Dollar Tree, one of the larger ones, one of the medium ones, and one of the small ones. Now, because I want this to stand up and not roll around and be easy to work with, I'm going to be taking my zip sander and just sanding off a little bit down at the bottom. This again is going to make it so that, see, it will sit right up instead of rolling around. I do also sand down the bottom of the medium one and the small one. I show you why a little bit later on, but basically it's so that when you stack them, it will look a little bit better. Now these balls, because they are styrofoam, they look like they're styrofoam. And I wanted to change that, so I grabbed a huge gallon, I believe it's a gallon, of lightweight spackle. I have a lot of it. You can just grab a little thing from Dollar Tree. I just use it all the time, and those little Dollar Tree things, they just don't cut it when you're constantly using it. So for this project, you will literally only use a tiny bit of the Dollar Tree spackle. And as you can see, all I did was go in with the spackle. You can use a brush or apply it however you would like to. You can wear gloves if you would like to. I don't mind getting messy. Plus, it kind of helped me really rub that spackle down into the holes of the styrofoam, really filling it out. Or should I say filling it in? I don't know. Either way, you want to cover all 3 of the balls with the spackle and then set it off to dry. By the way, this is pink, but it does dry white. Once my spackling was completely dry, here's where I show you guys why I sanded some of the balls down. I haven't sanded the top ball down, the smallest one, and as you can see, it doesn't really look right when you put those 2 together, but these ones where I did sand them down, they just fit together and look more natural. Now it's time to stack these on top of each other, and to do that, I'm just using some E6000 as well as some Gorilla Glue hot glue, and in between each one of the balls, I did go ahead and just sand it down a little bit so it had a flat surface to glue them together. Once they are all 3 glued together, now we have our snowman body, and I think it is coming out absolutely perfect. I mean, don't get me wrong, all snowman bodies and snow women bodies are perfect, no body shaming here. Now for my snowman's features and details, I'm going to be using this air dry clay from Dollar Tree. You can go through your stash and use any little buttons or anything that you would like to use. I decided to use this so I could make my own, because when I make my own, I'm able to make them the size that I actually need. So I just kind of took this and rolled it into a teeny tiny little carrot shape. I even took the back of my X-Acto knife and made little like dents in the carrot. And once I had my carrot done, I decided I want to make some buttons as well. To make my buttons, I just rolled a little tiny piece into a ball, then took a craft stick, smashed it down. Now this clay does crack quite a bit, so all you have to do is kind of roll it, and you can get it wet as well. I did just spray a little bit on a plate next to me, and just dab your finger in it or a brush, and this clay smooths out super easy. So all you want to do is just get it into this little tiny circle shape. Again, you guys can use buttons. I did not have any on hand. Well, actually I do, I just don't know where they're at. So yeah, technically they're not on hand. For the holes on the button, all I did was take a push pin and I just pushed in 4 little holes. And I did go ahead and repeat this step, making 3 buttons total. Then I just set them aside to dry. Here they are. I think they turned out so stinking cute. And now I'm just going to go in with some black paint and paint all 3 of them black. For my carrot's nose, I didn't have the exact orange that I wanted, but I had this one, so I went ahead and used some orange paint to paint my carrot nose. Now for my snowman's eyes, I was going to use something else, but I could not find the right size, so I just used a little bit more of that air dry clay, rolling it into teeny tiny balls and then smashing it in between my fingers, and honestly, that worked absolutely perfect. I did try to make some little teeny tiny smiles. You can kind of see there off to the left. Those did not work out. Unfortunately, they kept breaking, but I did end up using something else for the smile. I don't know about you guys, but to me, a snowman cannot be a snowman or snow woman without some kind of headpiece, whether it be a hat, scarf, Santa hat, something. Now, I didn't have any little teeny tiny snowman hats at the time, but I did have these Dollar Tree scarecrow hats, and I just picked off the little fake patches that they had on there. It was not glued very well, so I did just re-glue that burlap back down. And then I just went in with some black chalk paint and I painted the entire hat black. Once my snowman's hat was completely dry, now it's time to add some details and some pizzazz to it. You can add whatever you would like. I first went in with some jute twine and just wrapped it around. You do want to make sure that when you're putting any details on your hat, these hats specifically do have a like seam in the back. So just make sure that you're paying attention to that and you start any of your pieces at that seam so then you can have a nice clean finish in the front. I started where that seam was, added some jute twine, wrapped it around a few times, and then stopped right at that same seam and then glued it down. Now that I have my jute twine on, I wanted to add a little bit of red. The only teeny tiny red ribbon that I had was off of this Valentine's Day ribbon that I got off of Amazon. I will have it linked down below, but I will also have a little thin red velvet ribbon linked because that's basically what this was. I just clipped off a little piece of that red thin velvet ribbon, placed it around my hat, again, starting in the back where that seam is and ending at that same spot. Next, I wanted to add a little bit of greenery, so I just pulled a little teeny tiny piece of greenery from my stash, and I'm just going to hot glue it right onto the snowman's hat. I wanted to add a few pine cones, but finding small enough pine cones for this type of project is pretty much impossible, at least real ones. These were real, and all I did was just take my scissors as well as like a little wire cutting tool. I will have that linked down below. I use it for all kinds of different things, and I'm just going to basically cut these pine cones in half. You can't even tell, especially using the top part of the pine cone. So I just cut it down to the size that I needed. Right when I was just about to glue these on, I felt like I needed to add a different greenery. So I wanted something with a little bit of sparkle, a little bit of a snow look. So I had this pick that I actually got at a Goodwill in a huge bag of just random greeneries and floral picks. And I absolutely loved the sparkle pieces on here. And these like ice crystals, oh my gosh, they're so pretty. They have a little bit of shiny glitter to them, and I just absolutely love them. So I wanted to add those to the greenery. Now, these are really long pieces, so I do have to just cut them down and individually put them in. So I did group a few of them. I didn't do it individually with all of them, but some of them I just stuck in a little piece wherever I felt like it needed to be. And then with the other ones, I just, like here, I'm going to take just a little tiny grouping and add a little bit of hot glue on the end and then stick it right down into my existing greenery. And I'm just going to keep repeating that, adding the sparkly little branches as well as the ice crystal branches, or not really branches, I guess. What leaves? I don't know, because technically that's like the leaves of the tree. You guys know what I'm talking about. Well, maybe. If you don't know what I'm talking about the needles, the pine needles of the pick. I'm just going to repeat this, adding these little pieces of greenery to my existing greenery until I like the look of it. Then once I was done adding my little pieces of greenery, I'm just going to go ahead and hot glue my little pine cones down onto the hat. Once I had both those glued on, here's how the hat looks, and you guys, honestly, this is turning out even cuter than I thought it was going to be. I wanted to add some red berries, and on this pick, there are little clusters of berries, and some of them are little teeny tiny, so I just snipped off a piece of those, and then all I had to do was cut it down to size and just shove it right up underneath my pine cones. I didn't necessarily have to glue it down because of the way it fit. You can glue it down if you would like. Another option for some small berries are the pip berries on the pip berry garland. I got my garland from Dollar Tree. I just cut a few of the berries off, cut them off the little stem piece, and then I'm just going to glue them into place. I personally liked that these pip berries and the other berries were different colors, so it gave it a little bit more detail. Once I had all my berries glued on, here is how the hat looks, and oh my goodness, this is probably the prettiest snowman hat I have ever seen. Now it's time for my favorite part, and that is putting all of the pieces onto the snowman. And for the buttons, I just put one on the larger bottom round ball, and then I put two on the middle ball. And I also decided to use just a little teeny tiny piece of plastic that I had found in my craft room. And here it's just kind of got a little bit of a curve to it, and I thought it would be perfect for the smile. But before I add the facial features, I do want to put the hat on just so that I don't have anything in the way. Using my fingers, I did make a little indentation so the hat sat on better, and I just hot glued it down. Now that my hat's on, I can start gluing on my facial features, and I started with the eyes, just taking them, adding a little bit of hot glue, and placing them onto the snowman where I want them. And of course, I did the same thing with his carrot nose. And for the smile, again, I'm using this little curved piece of plastic that was just in the bottom of a toad in my craft room. You can make a little smile using some yarn or even some like a little wire, many different options, but I just cut this down so that he'd kind of have this little side smirk smile. That was kind of hard to say. And then I just glued it right on as well. You guys, oh my goodness, stop. This is so stinking cute. And we're not even done yet. It's just going to keep getting better. Next, I'm going to be making the snowman's scarf. And for my scarf, I'm just using this red and like a cream colored buffalo check ribbon. It was a little bit too wide, so I just kind of figured out a way to fold it into a way where it will be the width that I need. So basically all I'm going to do is just take one side, fold it into the center point, and then I'm going to take the other side and fold it over as well. And this is going to give me the size that I would like it to be. You can make yours thinner or wider, however you would like. And I'm just going to take it, wrap it around my snowman's neck, and I just kind of play with it for a minute, trying to figure out which way I want the scarf to fall. Once I liked the look of the position that my snowman's scarf was in, I grabbed some E6000 and I'm going to wrap it around the back, at least putting the E6000 there, and then I use hot glue in the front onto the ribbon just to hold it in place as well. I totally just realized watching this back and doing the voiceover that I was not using E6000. I was using the Gorilla Glue Gel, I do believe, but E6000 is pretty much the same thing and will work just as well. To give my scarf a more realistic look at the bottom, I did go ahead and just cut little slits and fray that up quite a bit. I did go ahead and hot glue the scarf down here just so that I could keep it where I want it and it's not going to move around. Okay, you guys, for my snowman's arms, hear me out. I found these snowy branches at Dollar Tree and I fell in love with them instantly. You could go out in your yard, grab some twigs off of a tree. You could do many different styles of the arms. You can just use your imagination, but I personally loved the look of these snowy branches from Dollar Tree, so I just cut them down to size and I decided to make my snowman look like he's waving just by simply hot gluing the branches on. At this point, I was looking at my snowman and I just kind of thought something was missing from where his scarf is, whether it be greenery or a bow. And I decided to just take a little bit more of that velvet thin ribbon off of that ribbon pack from Amazon, the Valentine's Day ribbon. And I'm just going to make it into a little teeny tiny bow. I just do the shoestring or bunny ear method. And once I had my little bow, I'm going to hot glue it right onto my snowman, right where his scarf is, kind of up towards the top. Once I had the bow glued on, I looked at the tails to figure out how long I wanted them to be, and then I just cut off the excess. I do end up gluing the little red strip down as well, so that it's not moving around. Okay, now he's looking super snazzy. Now, even though my snowman stands up on his own because I sanded that bottom part of it, I do want to add a base, and for my base, I'm just using one of these Dollar Tree wood rounds, and I just glued it right onto the center of the wood round, and I wanted to add some snow on there as well, but I wanted the snow to look like the snow on his arms, so I just kind of pulled some of the faux snow off of these Dollar Tree picks, and then once I had a good bit of that snow pulled off, I'm just going to use some Mod Podge and glue it down here at the bottom of the snowman on the wood round. And once I had the amount of snow on there that I wanted, this project was done. A few weeks ago, I was at my mom's house. We were down in her basement just going through some things, and she pulled this snowman out, which used to go with her home decor. She had more of a rustic country decor, and now she has more of the modern farmhouse with the black and the white. So this guy no longer went with her decor, so I asked her if I could redo it for her, and she was all for it. I started by removing most of the things on the snowman, like the scarf, the hanger, which I have no idea what was going on up here. I don't think my mom did that. I do know she got this from Goodwill, but I have no clue what the metal ring was for, along with the twine. You could have totally just used the twine, but we got it off. I also removed the greenery, but you guys already know I definitely kept those teeny tiny little cinnamon sticks. Those were so cute. I started with the snowman's hat, and I'm just going to take some black chalk paint and go ahead and just cover the entire hat. On the original piece under here and up here, they did not have painted or along the sides, so I just went ahead and painted that entire thing. As cute as this snowman's face was, I did have to sand it off because I'm going to be painting this white and then going in and sanding it down. But I had to get rid of the smile at least. The eyes I wasn't too worried about because I do kind of want to leave them on there as a little bit of a guide. I knew they would poke through the white paint. So I only had a little bit of chalk paint left, and this stuff was super old, so it was very thick. I just added a little bit of water, and then I'm going to paint the entire bottom of the snowman as well as the bottom to the snowman. Then once everything was dry, I went in with my zip sander and started the sanding process. Now, I started off just very lightly at first. I knew I wanted a very heavy sand on the side, but again, you guys can make all these projects however you would like to. I usually say that in a lot of my videos because these projects are inspirational and you can take them and mix and match them up, put your own style onto them. If you like more of a rustic look or more of a whimsical look, go ahead and get you something like this. They have these wood snowmen on Etsy all over the place. I'm sure you could even find them on Amazon, and you could really make something just like this. Even if you have scrap wood laying around, that would be perfect as well. So you just make some circles and you can make you a snowman. It's really simple. So along with sanding all of these sides, I thought at first, okay, so I did do it, but I do end up changing my mind later on. I thought I wanted a little bit of distressing throughout the center of the snowman. So you see me kind of doing that here, where I'm just making some scratching and distressed marks going throughout. I do end up changing that later on. And again, like I said, I sanded down this entire thing especially making sure I do all of the edges, all of the corners, and just really getting some of that wood to show through. You do not have to de-stress if that is not your thing. You guys already know that, but let me tell you, I am loving the way this turns out. Like I said, I do change up the paint a little bit later on just so that it's not de-stressed as much, but it's not much of a difference. So that heart there, I did have to unscrew it, and it did have glue on there, so I just removed that and then sanded down that glue. And yes, I know you're probably thinking, why didn't you do that beforehand? Well, at first I thought I was going to leave the hearts and then paint them, but I decided I wanted to actually get rid of them and use something completely different entirely. So that's what I did. These little hearts for the buttons, they were also glued on, but they had a brad nail in them as well. So I could not get to the brad nail without kind of busting up the heart a little bit. So I just used my Cricut spatula, popped those hearts off, and then took my scissors and pulled out the brad nail. I sanded down that area just to make it nice and smooth, and then I'm also going to take the same white that I used for the snowman, just paint over that. I took my finger just to blend it in. Now, like I said, I do end up changing the paint, but I'm glad I'm kind of showing how it will look severely distressed. You can also distress it more if you would like, but I will show how I end up doing it in the end, where mainly the sides of the snowman is distressed, but the center is more solid. So for my snowman's nose, I couldn't just use that little button or half bead, whatever it was on there. So I wanted it to look like it had an actual carrot nose. I grabbed some of the Dollar Tree Crafters Square air dry clay. This terracotta color was the only color that I had seen at my store. So I just grabbed some of that, made it into a little carrot shape. And then you can take, if it starts to crack, just take a little bit of water, put it on your finger, and rub it down. The cracks disappear like magic. Now, I wanted my carrot to not be super perfect. No carrot is perfect. So I just curved it up a little bit, and then I'm going to take my scissors and just score some of those little lines in there like carrots have. Now that I have my carrot shape and I like the look of the carrot, I want to have a really nice flat end on one side. So I just take my scissors, cut it in half, making sure those line details are on the top. And now I have a nice flat surface so that when it dries, it will be able to be glued to the board. And I do cut it down just so that it's a little bit smaller, but I do actually end up making another one, another carrot nose, because I couldn't figure out if I thought this one was a little bit too big. So I do just make a second one just kind of as a backup. I do end up going with the larger carrot nose, but I just wanted to play it safe and have two different sizes ready. But let me just say, using air dry clay to make carrot noses for snowmen are like, it's a great idea. Since I made my own nose for the snowman, I had to remove this half wood bead. You guys, I thought this thing was just glued on, and it technically was, but once I finally got it to pop off, I realized why it was so difficult to come off, and it's actually like attached inside the snowman as well. So just like I did with the hearts, I sanded down that area. For the majority of the hole, I'm going to fill it with hot glue, allow that to dry, and then fill it in with some spackling. I wanted the snowman to look like he had real snow falling down onto his hat. So I'm going to start off by taking some of my Mod Podge just on a little brush, placing the Mod Podge quite thick where I just feel like I want the snow to be or where it would fall naturally. And for the snow, you guys can use any kind of faux snow that you would like. I have some actual tree flocking snow, like to flock your Christmas tree with, because I'm going to be reflocking mine this year. If you guys would like a video on that, let me know down in the comments. But I love using this snow flocking because it's so fine that, and that's kind of how I feel like snow looks naturally. There's like this really fine layer, and then the flakes kind of get bigger and thicker as the snow builds up. So I wanted this really fine, thin layer first, so I used the sifter and just smacked the faux snow all around my Mod Podge. And then once I had that layer on, then I'm going to add more Mod Podge, grabbing chunks of that faux snow, the flocking snow, and placing it, kind of pushing it down into the Mod Podge so that it stuck a little bit better and it was a lot thicker. Once I had it all covered, I just flipped it over, hit it on the back a few times to shake off any of the excess. And then for another layer, I wanted to take some more Mod Podge, place it again on all of those same spots. Now, this I only placed the Mod Podge, like I didn't completely cover each spot. I just placed a little bit here and there, but they were nice thick amounts because I'm going to be using the Dollar Tree Epsom salt. This has a very crystally look to it, kind of like ice. So I just grab some of that right with my hand and just sprinkle it on there. This is going to kind of give it that sparkly, shimmery look as people walk past it. And it's also going to give the snow a more realistic look as well. And what I mean by a more realistic look is this right here. I love how this is turning out. And if you look, you can totally see the different layers, that really fine, thin snow of the faux snow, and then the Epsom salt on top. Again, to me, that just makes it look more realistic. You guys, if you're going for more of a whimsical look, you could use the sparkly pretty stuff. Now, for me, this wasn't sparkly enough, so I did decide to just add a little bit more Mod Podge, not completely covering each spot again, but just kind of putting dabs here and there. And then I have this iridescent glitter that it looks like it's like one of them gel pens, but it's not, or glitter gel pens, glitter glue pens, but it's not. It actually has loose glitter. So I just puffed and pushed all that around and gave it a sparkly look. My spackling where the snowman's nose was is now dry, so I did just go ahead and sand that down. And here's where I was kind of like, I'm really not feeling that distressed in the center of the snowman. So I did, as you see, go ahead and repaint it and only distress around all of the sides. The only orange I have in my craft room is pumpkin orange, so I did just go ahead and paint my carrot noses with the pumpkin orange. But to give it a little bit more of a realistic look, I feel like that's my favorite word in this video, goodness. But I am going to take some faux stain. If you watch my channel, you know I just make some faux stain with the burnt umber paint and a little bit of water, and it gives me a really nice brown stain. I do take that stain, mainly putting it in the cracks and then a little bit on the side to kind of dirty up my carrot and make it not look so perfect. I mean, carrots do come out of the ground, so we want to make it actually look like that's what it is. I set my little carrot noses off to dry, and then I started working on the eyes. I mainly wanted to get just an outline or the main shape of the eyes done. So I drew 2 little circles where I wanted the eyes to be, but I wanted them to have more of an oval shape up top, or like an arch shape up top, I guess I should say, and then a flat bottom. So I just then started kind of making them into the shape that I wanted them. I placed my carrot nose down just to get a feel for the face, and then drew a squiggly little line smiley face. I grabbed my makeup and used some pink. I had no blush, you guys. I'm not a big blush person, so I had to use some eyeshadow, and I just smudged it in where his cheeks are, and it turned out so cute. Then I did go back in, adding a little bit of detail that I wanted on the snowman's eyes with my black paint pen. I take a little teeny tiny end to a paintbrush, make a few white dots in there with some white chalk paint to give the eyes that natural look. I also then realized I wanted those little creasy smile bits on the side, so I drew those on as well. I decided we're not going to add his nose until last as kind of like his very finishing touch. At this point, I wanted to add some greenery and jazz up his hat, so I did take some greenery pieces that I have just cut off of floral picks over the years, or greenery picks over the years, and I'm just going to kind of play with them and play with the placement wherever I feel like it looks good, that's where I'm going to glue it down. You guys can use whatever florals, greenery. You do not have to add anything up here. You could just do a bow. Honestly, so many different things would look really pretty. Once I had my greenery on, I also had these tree branch looking pick pieces that had like these sparkly, almost kind of like ice crystals on them. So I did also take a few of those, cut them down, and just hot glue them in and throughout the greenery wherever I see fit. I wanted to create a little velvet bow for the snowman's hat, so I'm just going to use this ribbon pack that I got off of Amazon. It does come with 4 different colors, and I just cut off a piece of the white. I'm going to put it in the Cancer Awareness ribbon shape, grab the loop up at the top, bring it down in where the tails cross, and then you can just take a zip tie or a piece of jute twine and then tie that into a knot securing the bow. Once you cut off the excess twine, you can just pull on the loops and the tails to get it exactly how you want it. And then I'm going to just cut the tails to the bow at an angle so that it has a little bit of shape to it, and then glue it right here in the center of the greenery on the snowman's hat. I'm also going to take this cute little pine cone, place it right on there, hot gluing it down. For my snowman scarf, I had this scrap piece of fabric in the buffalo check white and black, which my mom absolutely loves. Her curtains in her home are the same exact look. So I took this and I'm going to just place it, wrapping it around the snowman's neck, at least the back of it. And then I'm going to hot glue one end down, making sure that it hangs down where I want it to hang. Then I just wrap it the other side around the neck one more time. And at this point, once you wrap the other side, you'll see here in just a second, of course, I'm playing with the placement, but once you wrap it around here and you bring it that end over, you want to just place it up through that piece that you wrapped around and then just pull it back down over it and hot glue it into place. I will be cutting the length of the scarf down. I just want to add the buttons first so I can see where I want the length to be. For my snowman's buttons, I'm going to be using the smaller snowflakes from Dollar Tree, and then I also grabbed 2 different styles of the larger snowflakes because of course I couldn't make up my mind right then which one I wanted to use, so I just grabbed one of each, and then I'm going to faux stain all of these by using the chalk paint or paint really and water method. I have used acrylic paint, chalk paint, it doesn't really matter. Just add some water to it to water it down. And then you have a faux stain. This is the burnt umber paint by Apple Barrel that I'm using. And once they are dry, I'm just going to take those little snowflakes and place them where I want the buttons to be on my snowman's upper body. And then I just hot glue them down. Now that I have the placement of my snowflakes slash buttons for my snowman, I can now go back and cut down the scarf. I just cut it down a tiny bit and then I'm going to cut slits into it to give it that frayed look. After I cut the slits, I do pull a bunch of those little string bits out of there. I feel like I sound like Brandy saying bits, but all I did was just do that to both sides, and it does give it that frayed look like scarves have sometimes. You can also glue the scarf ends down right where you want them, but I was okay with exactly how they were hanging. Now, I forgot to do this step before I added the snowflake buttons, but I am going to go in with my zip sander and sand all of the edges to the snowflake down just to give it a little bit of a rustic farmhouse touch. I glued that large snowflake right where that larger heart was, down on the bottom of the snowman, and I did add a little bit of burnt umber paint down in the hole. I found these dog bows at Dollar Tree, and the buffalo check one with the black and white was perfect, so I just cut off that piece and hot glued it down onto my scarf. It was so stinking cute. I thought it matched adorably, and how easy was that? I did not even have to make the bow. To attach my snowman's bottom back on, I'm going to just use some jute twine from Dollar Tree. This is easy to just string through. If you take some hot glue, place it on the end of the jute twine. I also do this with other types of ropes so that the bottom doesn't fray when you're trying to push it through the holes. I just add a little bit of hot glue on the end, give it a second to dry, and then twist the end into a point. And as you can see, it will slip right into the hole. Once I had both pieces of the jute twine on, I'm going to tie them into a double knot. Now, you can tie it into a bow if you would like. You could also make the knot on the back just by simply stringing the jute twine on through the front of the snowman and then tying it into the back. But I actually wanted the knots on the outside, so I tied them into double knots first, and then before I did the third knot, I added a little bit of hot glue between them and then tied really and pulled really tight so that it is nice and secure. I cut off the excess, and then I'm going to slide the knots up towards that top hole just because I personally liked the look of that. I thought it just gave it a little bit more of a rustic touch as well. Just like the original decor piece, I wanted there to be a gap between these two pieces, so I made sure the gap was even, and then I did decide to just cut the tails down to my bow so that they weren't in the snowman's face as much. And now, you guys, I am going to start adding the snowman's nose, and this is his final piece. I do just take it, add some E6000 or Gorilla Glue, not sure, yep, that's Gorilla Glue, and some hot glue and place it right on, and oh my goodness, he is so stinking cute. For this project, I picked up this bag of beads from Dollar Tree. I loved the fact that there was 3 different sizes, small, medium, and large. Then I also had this garland here, which I can tell I've kind of learned along the way because I took the beads off of the white twine it was on just to string it on some jute twine when I could have just made a tassel like you can see me doing here and then just attached it to the already made bead garland. To make my tassel, I just wrapped my jute twine around my hands quite a few times, and then I took that giant lump of loops off, grabbed another piece of jute twine, attached it around those top loops, wrapped it around quite a few times, tying it in a knot, and then cutting off that excess, as well as cutting the large loops down at the bottom. Now, another thing I've learned since making this project, you can add your ribbon like you see me doing here when you take the loops off of your hand. Before you take your piece of jute twine and tie those top loops off, add your ribbon first, and then you won't have to do it a second time. I then dovetailed the ends of my ribbon just by cutting at an inward diagonal angle. And here I am stringing on the beads back onto some jute twine when I could have definitely just left it the way it was. Now I'm going to just add my tassel right onto the bottom. I just put my twine from the garland through the loop of the tassel and then tied it in a knot. To create the snowman that's going to be hanging off of my garland, I'm just going to be taking 3 different sizes of those beads from that bead pack from Dollar Tree, and I painted them white. I put the beads aside to dry and started working on my snowman's hat, and for the brim of the hat, I just grabbed a quarter as well as some Dollar Tree wood, traced out the quarter, and then I'm just going to cut that circle out. If you do not have a little piece of wood that is thin enough, you can also use MDF board like a Dollar Tree sign. Man, I was jumping all over the place in these videos, you guys. I am so sorry. Well, now we are on to making the snowman's face and all of his little features. So I just took some black paint with a small little paintbrush and added some dots for his eyes, his smile, and his buttons. To be honest, I love watching my older videos because it really does remind me how far I've came. Okay, so now back to the hat. I'm going to grab another tiny bead, one of the smallest beads in that pack, and I'm going to paint it black as well. Now, you're going to want to string that black small bead on first, then your little wood round piece that you painted black. I don't know if I showed that. And then you are going to string on the rest of your snowman, head, body, and then bum. I also decided to add just a little scarf by cutting a piece of ribbon down and just tying it between the head and the body area. I then strung on a smaller bead, tied a knot so that the other beads do not slip off. And here it is. I'm sorry this project was super fast. I was super new when I made this, but it has been a fan favorite ever since. And I totally see why, because he is absolutely adorable. For this DIY, I will be using 2 of these glass bowls from Dollar Tree. They have them now in 2 different sizes and they stack on top of each other perfect. You will also need one of these build your own snow globes from Dollar Tree. You can remove the bottom and the inner part and also the paper. This is going to be the head to our snowman, and as you can see, they are all 3 different sizes. So again, that is also perfect as well. Next, I'm going to use some fairy lights that I got off of Amazon. They are like 10 feet long. Super, super great deal. I believe I got like a 30 pack for around 20 something dollars. I will have these linked down below in the description box. One thing I really love about them lights is the very, very small, tiny battery pack. You can use Dollar Tree lights, but the battery pack is a lot larger. As you can see, I just took the fairy lights and kind of smashed them down so that they were flat and tangled them up a little bit. And then I'm taking more of that Halloween fake spider web and just taking a tiny bit and fluffing it out so that it is nice and, what's the word I'm looking for? Almost see-through in a way. You just don't want to have any clumps where it won't be as see-through. You know how it can kind of bunch up and be darker in certain spots? I hope you get what I'm saying. Either way, now you're going to place your lights down inside, and then I take another very tiny, small amount of that spider web again, and I flatten it out just so that it is a really thin layer over top so that you don't really see as much of the wiring on those fairy lights. Then I take some of the Dollar Tree faux snow again, and I just start placing it down inside the bowl, covering over top of that faux spider web, and this really gives a nice, pretty, snowy look. Of course, you guys already know you can use whatever you would like inside of your snowman, but what I'm going to do is use some of these new Dollar Tree trees. At least they are new to me this year, and they are actually really adorable. I love the style of them this year. However, the larger one in the pack, because they do come in different sizes in this pack, and the larger ones are a little bit too tall, so you want to take the 2 largest ones out and then use the rest of the other sizes. So also, when you're adding your trees down inside, you want to, or if you're not even using trees, you at least want to use something kind of tall like these trees here so that you can cover the wire. And by cover it, all I mean is I'm placing those trees right in front of where the wire for our lights will be. And I did use my Gorilla Glue hot glue to glue the trees down. Next, I'm taking some of this magic mold, I do believe it's called, from Dollar Tree. You can also get it at Family Dollar or Dollar General, I do believe, as well. And all I'm going to do is make a snowman out of this magic mold. And this is kind of like a air dry foam clay, I guess you could say. And I just take it and roll it in my hands, making a few different size balls until I liked the size. And of course, making a snowman, I did make 3 different sizes and then I stacked them on top of each other. Once I had my snowman shape, I use a tiny little paintbrush. You could also use a paint pen for this. I use my black chalk paint and I just start painting on his face as well as his buttons on his shirt. You could also paint your snowman's nose on, but I decided to take a little bit more of that magic mold and I just made a little teeny tiny carrot shaped nose and it was super teeny tiny. And once I had the shape and size that I wanted, I just put it right on our snowman where his nose needs to go. And then I use my apple barrel pumpkin colored paint to paint his nose a really pretty orange color. Once his little carrot nose was done, I'm going to use some of that fabric that I made the trees with, and I just cut a very little sliver so that I could make that into his scarf. Now, most scarves that I know of have these little frillies at the end, so I just cut little slivers so that it had more of that realistic scarf look. Next, I just place it around my snowman's neck how I would like it to be, and then I just add some hot glue and glue it down into place. Isn't he just so cute, you guys? I wish I had a little hat. I should have made one out of that magic mold, but that would have been so adorable. And now that my mini snowman is complete, I add some hot glue onto the bottom and then glue him down in here with the trees, and our bottom to our snowman is done and we can work on the second layer, which I use the smaller glass piece from Dollar Tree, and I do the same thing with the lights, the spider web, and the snow. Again, that's repetitive and I didn't think you guys would want to watch that all over again. So next I also add the trees. This I did want to show again just because you can also cut these trees down if you would like to have more sizes, I guess you could say. And again, you also want to glue them in front of the fairy lights so that it will kind of hide the string or the cord from the fairy lights. I also added a few more of these trees to this second part of our snowman than I did the first because I wanted to have kind of like the family is going and picking out their Christmas tree, so there is a bunch of little Christmas tree options. I want to add this little truck again so that it looks like they're going and picking out their Christmas tree. Now, Dollar Tree does have these in a Christmas version, but a lot of my Christmas stuff is still packed up, and I do have these in the Christmas version, but again, there's no way I'm going to be able to find those right now. So I just took off the pieces to these fall ones and I'm going to turn it into the Christmas one myself. So I take my red chalk paint and I paint the little truck that is green, and I just really worried about like the main truck part. I did leave the top part of the tires green and the tires black, obviously. And then I'm going to use one of these little teeny tiny mini trees. I pull off the bottom of it and I kind of push the bristles down so that I can glue it onto the back of my truck and it will look a little bit more like it is supposed to be there. Of course, if you do have the Christmas little trucks, you can completely skip this part and go to the next step. Now, because this little truck is kind of flat, I'm going to take the piece that I took off the bottom of the Christmas tree and I'm just going to add some hot glue on the side, and then I glue it to the back tire, and you can't even see it. It hides perfectly and it stands our little truck up. And now we also have more of a surface to add our hot glue. I add some hot glue on the bottom of that piece and then also on the front tire, and I glue it down inside the globe. And then, of course, I add one more tree. Now our second layer to the snowman is done and we can move on to his head. For the head, again, we're using that build your own snow globe, and this piece in here can kind of be a little bit of a pain to come out. It's because it's supposed to be watertight so that you can build your snow globe, and I just removed that, and then I'm going to pour a decent amount of that faux snow from Dollar Tree down inside the snowman's head. Unlike the other 2 layers to our snowman, I'm just taking the fairy lights and I just tangle them up and put them down inside, and you again want to have that battery pack hanging out, and you still can add your airtight piece, your bottom piece on even with that hanging out because it is so thin, and you have this really neat snowman head that glows and has gorgeous snow down inside. I absolutely could not wait for this part, and that is building up our snowman. I take the Gorilla Glue hot glue and I just place it around the bottom layer to our snowman, place the second layer on top, wipe off any excess hot glue, and as you can see, I am making sure that the cords to our fairy lights are all facing the same direction and going down the back of our snowman. Then you are just going to hot glue your build your own snow globe snowman's head right on top. Here's a little sneak peek, and oh my goodness, how stinking cute! I love this DIY so much. I kind of wanted to go along with our mini little snowman, so just like with him, I made a scarf out of that fabric that I used to make the trees, the fabric from Dollar Tree, and then I'm going to loosely wrap it around his neck. Not super loose, but loose enough to where once you are done, you can slide your battery pack pieces up behind the scarf and then you will not see them. So once I had his scarf wrapped around, I just hot glued it down in place where I would like it. Then for the snowman's face, I just again used that black chalk paint and my little tiny paintbrush, and I painted his face, his nose, and his buttons on as well. Now for this snowman, I was able to find a hat, and they do also have perfect size snowman hats at Dollar Tree as well. However, this one was only 98 cents from Walmart, so I definitely grabbed it up because it is cheaper, and it was a pick, so I just pulled it off the pick and I kind of dent it a little bit so that it looks a little bit more correct once I glue it on. And then I just add a little bit of hot glue and place it right on top of our snowman's head, and this DIY is done. Starting off this project, I'm going to be using 2 grapevine wreaths, one smaller and one larger. For this next step, I do recommend using a bristled paintbrush just because you're able to get down into the wreath form a little easier. I'm using some chalk paint in the color white. I am not going to completely cover the wreath form. If you would like that, you can do that, but I did want this to have a little bit more of a rustic look, and I did this process to both the smaller and larger wreath. I want to make a snowman wreath for my front door, so I'm taking the smaller wreath form, and of course our snowman needs a hat. I had some of these wood shims on hand, so that is what I used. You can use a paint stir stick. Dollar Tree carries rectangular wood. There really are so many different options. Because these wood shims are in a triangular shape, I took some wood glue and hot glue and I glued them together so that I would have the rectangular shape that I needed. This is going to be the brim of the snowman's hat, so I'm just taking some black chalk paint and I'm going to completely cover the piece of wood. For the top of my snowman's hat, I'm going to be using these wood planks from Dollar Tree. I will need 2 of them for the size that I want my hat to be. So I'm going to be taking some craft sticks, popsicle sticks, whatever you'd like to call them, and I take wood glue as well as hot glue. However, the hot glue that is in my glue gun is also a wood glue hot glue stick, so it worked out perfectly. I just simply glued the craft sticks down to hold the wood planks together. I will be using a wide ribbon and gluing it around these wood planks, but I wanted to paint most of it black first because I do want there to be a black stripe at the top of the hat to match the brim. I did stop down here at the bottom just so that I could glue the brim of the hat down, and I used some wood glue from Dollar Tree as well as some wood glue hot glue. Now that all the paint is dry and my hat is assembled, I'm going to be using this beautiful buffalo check and burlap ribbon. I do believe I either got it from Big Lots or Walmart. I will definitely find out where I got it from and leave it down in the description box or link it in products. I cut off a piece of the ribbon to the size that I needed, and I'm just going to make sure that I'm going to place it in the right spot. Once I liked where I had it, I take some hot glue, place it down at the brim of the hat, and then place the ribbon right on top. Now, I probably should have taken some hot glue and glued the top of the ribbon down as well at the top of the hat, but for whatever reason, I just folded the sides over and hot glued them down on the back of the hat. Now that the ribbon is wrapped around, the main part of the snowman's hat is complete, and before I add any embellishments, I do want to add it onto the wreath form, so I'm taking some more wood glue, hot glue, and I'm adding a generous amount onto the wreath form, and I'm gluing my snowman's hat down. You can place your snowman hat straight at the top, however, I did want mine to have a little bit of a tilt or lean to it, so that is how I glued mine down. You guys can do yours however you would like. Then once my hat is glued on and the glue is dry, I'm going to take this beautiful floral pick, or greenery pick I guess I could say. I actually got this in a huge bag from the thrift shop, and you guys, do not skip out florals in thrift shops. You will get so much for so cheap, and these are beautiful florals. Don't get me wrong, Dollar Tree has some pretty florals, but you guys can get these type of florals for even cheaper than you would pay for the florals or greenery from Dollar Tree. I am absolutely obsessed with these little icicle branch pieces that were on this pick, so I grabbed those off, some of the smaller pine cones and some of the greenery. It looks like it has some snow on it. I also grabbed this other lighter greenery pick and added a few pieces on there as well. As you will see, I like to hold the piece up to my project before I glue it down, just to see if I'm going to actually like the look of it before I permanently glue it down or have to try and peel up a glued down piece. I just hold it up to my project, look and see if I like that look, and if I do, that is when I glue it down. Once I thought I had the greenery how I liked it, I do end up going back in and adding one more piece, but I do take some of the little pine cones, I grab 3 of those and glue them down to the center right in the greenery. A little tip that I like to do is hold up my piece and look at the greenery or florals, and that will kind of help you also see it in a different angle. And as soon as I lifted it up, I knew I needed another piece of that greenery back behind here, so that's what I did. Now it's time to take the snowman's head and attach it to the body. This larger wreath form had more of an oval shape to it, so I just twisted it. I think it was shaped like that because of storage, but I placed it how I wanted it to look. And then I take this absolutely huge, way too big zip tie. It's all I had on hand and I just made do. So I take the zip tie and I'm going to poke it back and forth through all of the grapevine in both of the wreaths, and I just kind of poke it through the center. You might have to guide it a little bit, and then you are just going to zip tie those 2 wreath forms together. And now, as you can see, our snowman's head is attached to his body. Okay, you guys, at this point, this is where I went back and forth for way too long on what exactly I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to use this ribbon because I wanted to incorporate the hat with it, and I just love this ribbon, but I didn't know if I wanted the snowman to have a scarf or to do a pretty bow. So in the end, I actually decided to combine the two and make a scarf bow or bow scarf. Either way, I'm so glad I made that decision. I just cut off a piece longer than what I knew I would need. It's better to cut off longer than to cut off shorter, obviously. And I also wanted the scarf to not have like a straight across look. When you see a scarf, it is like bunched up and just it looks comfy and actually warm. So all you see me here doing is kind of tacking the ribbon down so that it has some wrinkles in it and it just doesn't look so straight across, and it looks so much more natural. I knew exactly where I wanted the hanging pieces to the scarf to be, so all I did was take the ribbon and I'm just folding it and gluing it down in places so that that hanging piece on the scarf will be in the position that I would like it to be in. Now that I have the hanging pieces to the scarf where I want them, I'm going to cut in a diagonal inward angle to give this other end a dovetailed look, but I did cut it a little bit longer than the other side just so that it had, again, more of an authentic scarf look. For the bow part of the scarf, I'm just taking the same ribbon and I'm going to cut off a piece in a loop, and once I have that cut down, I'm going to take some hot glue, place it onto the ribbon, and I'm going to then glue the ribbon into a circular shape so that I can pinch it into the center. I'm going to just use a Chanel stem or pipe cleaner to secure the bow, and I just wrap it around the center, squishing the center of the bow in, and it is that simple. Once I have the Chanel stem wrapped nice and tight, the bow fluffed and looking how I would like it to look, I go ahead and cut off the excess of the Chanel stem. I thought that I was going to be okay with the white of the Chanel stem showing because there's the white in the ribbon itself, but I decided to take a piece of the ribbon, cut out a portion of the burlap, and I'm just going to wrap it around the center of the bow, covering the Chanel stem, and I hot glue it down in the back, and I just personally like the look so much better. To add the bow to the scarf, I just use some hot glue and place it down onto the scarf. And you guys, I think this is so stinking cute. I do kind of move the ribbon around just so it kind of has a little bit of motion to it. And once I was done with that, this DIY was done, and I'm so obsessed with how it turned out. Up one of these Christmas ornaments from Dollar Tree that already had this divot in it. You can use a regular bulb as well, but I thought it was pretty cool that it did have that in place already. Now I'm going to be taking some polyacrylic. I already had this on hand from staining our floors. You could use Mop and Glow, you can use Mod Podge, many different things for this. You're just going to pour it down inside your ornament, swish it around, and swirl it as you pour it out so it covers the entire ornament. Next, I will be using some glitter and just pouring it right down inside the ornament. I used this iridescent glitter diamond dust. It was super pretty. And again, you're just going to shake it around and swish it until the inside of the ornament is completely covered. I used a glass candlestick holder from Dollar Tree, painted it black, added some hot glue on the top, and then where the divot is on my snowman, I'm going to just add it right to the top of the candlestick holder. To create my snowman scarf, I'm just going to take a piece of fabric, cut a few slits in there to give it that frayed look, and once I have the look that I want, I'm just going to tie it right around the top of the candlestick holder, which is our snowman's neck. Sometimes I need greenery, and I just don't have any pieces that are small enough, so I love pulling the pieces off of Dollar Tree items like their ornaments, and then just placing it right underneath the snowman's head where I would like it, adding some pine cones as well as some berries. I created this project when I first started my channel, but it came out so cute and so many of my subscribers loved it. I had to show all of the new people that are here as well because it is just absolutely adorable and super easy to make. So next I grabbed this Dollar Tree hat from, I believe it was a Christmas ornament. They also have different styles at Walmart. This might have been from Walmart, but I do believe it was from Dollar Tree. And you guys, make a hole in the center and it fits perfectly right over top of where the ornament piece was. And now you have this cute little sideways hat. And then I grabbed a snowman face off of Etsy, placed all the pieces on where I wanted them, and this guy is so stinking cute. I hope you all enjoyed all of these snowman projects. Let me know down in the comments which one was your favorite. And if you enjoyed today's video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. That really, really helps out my YouTube channel. And you can also subscribe, which is free to you, and hit the bell notification so YouTube notifies you when I post new uploads. I truly hope to see you all and a few new friends on the next one. Bye!